never more than 7 minutes from weather on 13 Eyewitness News this morning. From Houston's news leader, this is 13 Eyewitness News Tonight.
The death of Ken Lay this morning came as a shock to many. The founder of ENRON is being remembered tonight as much for his contributions to society as for his part in one of the biggest corporate scandals in U.S. history. He was awaiting sentencing after being found guilty of conspiracy and fraud, a sad ending to several stressful years for Lay. He died of a massive heart attack at his home in Aspen, Colorado. Good evening, friends. I'm Dave Ward.
And I'm Gina Gaston. We have live team coverage tonight with reporter Jessica Willey, who looks at what happens now in the government's attempt to get millions of dollars of Lay's money. But first, we go live to reporter Tom Abrams, who begins our coverage live from Aspen, Colorado. Tom?
Gina, good evening from Aspen, Colorado. 600,000 people die every year from coronary artery disease. It is the most common killer in the United States, but as we all know, Ken Lay was no common man. Ken Lay loved it in Aspen, so much so that since his sentencing, the only place a judge would allow him to go legally other than Texas was Colorado. It was 1:41 in the morning at this secluded ranch just outside of Aspen where someone called 911. 90 minutes later, Ken Lay died at Aspen Valley Hospital.
Mr. Lay had severe coronary artery disease. There was evidence that he had had a heart attack in the past.
Lay was well known here. He'd once owned 4 pieces of property in this village, but there is still little sympathy.
It's unfortunate that his loss of life to his loved ones, but maybe it was better than spending the rest of his life in jail.
What I really think is that perhaps the whole tension of this killed him.
It was just 2 months ago that Lay stood in front of the federal courthouse in downtown Houston, a convicted man, his head up, vowing to fight on. Now, 1,000 miles away, his fight has ended as quickly as the company he created fell into bankruptcy and disgrace. The coroner said in a press conference this afternoon there was absolutely no sign of foul play whatsoever. They do say they are still awaiting the toxicology results. Reporting live from Aspen, Colorado tonight, Tom Abrams, 13 Eyewitness News.
And also late today, the coroner in Grand Junction, Colorado, said that Lay's body had been turned over to his family. Lay is survived by his wife, Linda, 5 children, and 12 grandchildren. This evening, family friend Reverend Bill Lawson spoke with the Lay's wife and 3 of his children on the phone from Aspen.
Right now, they're in deep mourning, but I think that they're pretty gutsy about it, and they're holding their chins up.
Now, we have learned his family has already made funeral arrangements for him. It is scheduled for this Sunday in Aspen, Colorado. We are told the family will then return to Houston for memorial service Tuesday at First United Methodist Church, which is on Main Street. No time has been set for that service. We have also learned Lay's body will be cremated and his ashes left in Aspen.
It was 6 weeks ago when Lay and his co-defendant Jeff Skilling were convicted of fraud and conspiracy. Lay was also convicted of bank fraud in a separate trial. His sentencing was set for October 23rd, but his death could now mean his conviction will be vacated. What is not clear, however, is whether the federal government will continue to go after Lay's assets, more than $43 million the government says was ill-gotten gains. Eyewitness News reporter Jessica Willey standing by live at the federal courthouse downtown with what the law says and how the government could pursue Lay's fortune. Jessica?
Dave, the last time we saw Ken Lay leave this federal courthouse in downtown Houston, he was guilty. But the law is pretty clear. A defendant's death wipes out the case against him, which means Ken Lay will now be legally innocent. In the court of public opinion, there is little disagreement.
He's still guilty, dead or alive.
When Ken Lay walked out of the federal courthouse in May, a convicted man, that was how history would remember him.
I really do think people think of him as guilty.
The courts now will have a different opinion.
Not only it ends the proceedings, but as the law uses the word ab initio, it's as if it never happened.
Which means in the eyes of the court, there was no indictment and certainly no conviction. All because of Lay's passing, and the reason is simple, says our legal analyst. Lay's appeal never made it to the appellate level.
The courts don't want to review a case when someone is no longer available to participate in the process.
However, the court battle may not be over. There's still the question of more than $43 million the government was seeking from Lay based on his conviction. Well, with no conviction, it's possible the government could turn to civil court. Michael Wynne is a former federal prosecutor.
There are a lot of attorneys for the Justice Department who do nothing but represent the United States in civil proceedings.
Wynne says suing Ken Lay's estate would be aggressive, but an option. The Justice Department declined to comment on its next move. It's the end no one expected.
This chapter of the Enron book is going to forever remain unfinished.
And if the government does sue Ken Lay's estate, experts say it could go after only half, because his widow, Linda Lay, is entitled to the other half. It's not clear just how big that estate is. As for that criminal case, a death certificate will be required by the court to close it out. Reporting live from the federal courthouse downtown, Jessica Willey, 13 Eyewitness News.
As for Jeff Skilling, he told the Associated Press today he was aware of Lay's death, but he had no comment. Our legal expert tells us Lay's death will not affect Skilling's sentencing, set for October 23rd. He still faces decades behind bars.
Even Ken Lay's toughest critics were surprised by his sudden passing. Among them, former Enron VP SHERRON Watkins, whose now famous memo warned higher-ups of the company's impending fall. Watkins expressed condolences to the Lay family through her lawyer, a former federal prosecutor. He says if convicted to prison, or rather if sentenced to prison, Lay would have served time in a minimum security federal prison, but would have been living among violent offenders.
Given the length of sentence he would have received, it would have been pretty much a life sentence for him, and it would have been a nightmare.
Ken Lay's attorney, Mike Ramsey, was unavailable for comment today. He is said to be working with Lay's family now. Now, it was Ramsey whose emergency heart surgery took him out of the courtroom, even as Lay was testifying in the Enron trial. The news of Ken Lay's death was a shock to thousands of former employees who once worked for Enron. That shock is giving way to emotions. Some see the passing as justice denied, while others say they feel for the Enron chief's family.
As a person, he was a dad, a husband, a grandfather, and my heart goes out to the family because, yes, you know, the Enron employees were affected by a lot of things that he did, but at the same time, he's a person.
Some employees said they hope they will be allowed to attend funeral services for the former Enron CEO.
Well, before his name became synonymous with corporate corruption and scandal, Ken Lay was known as one of Houston's most respected citizens and generous philanthropists. Eyewitness News anchor Ilona Carson joining us now with more on who Ken Lay was. Ilona?
Dave, his story was, until just recent years, the American dream, a man of humble beginnings who created an empire. And despite the focus on losses, Houston did benefit greatly from Ken Lay.
Kenneth Lay was born into a poor family in Tyrone, Missouri in 1942. He delivered newspapers and mowed lawns to help his father, who ran a general store. Lay graduated from the University of Missouri, then earned a doctorate at U of H in 1970. After a stint at Humble Oil, Lay joined the Navy and worked for the Department of the Interior before returning to business. As chairman and CEO of Enron, Ken Lay turned the company into an energy giant with $100 billion in annual revenue. During the days of Enron's greatness, Ken Lay was considered a hero to many Houstonians. Enron's financial power was Houston's gain, nowhere more apparent than at the city's shining new Enron field. And Lay was a respected philanthropist, giving millions of dollars to Houston charities. The United Way alone receives $6 million in donations every year. When the company fell, 5,600 jobs and $2 billion in pension plans were lost.
I continue to grieve for what happened at Enron. I mean, it was an enormous failure, and it was certainly the day that we filed for bankruptcy was probably the saddest day of my life.
Even after the collapse of Enron, philanthropy remained a priority for Lay.
We're going to prove my innocence. They're not going to get our house, and we are going to move on with our life and going to continue to make contributions wherever we can make contributions.
And many say until the end, Ken Lay remembered his roots and his faith.
I have a lot of faith in God, and there's a higher power involved here, and I'm convinced this is going to work out okay.
Ken Lay was 64 years old. Ilona, Carson, 13 Eyewitness News.
And you can find out more about Ken Lay and his legacy, as well as post messages on our website at abc13.com, and keep it here for continuing coverage.
It's not a catastrophe. To me, it is. To me, it's very much a catastrophe.
Still ahead, homeowners already dealt a blow by flooding that ruined their homes now learn help may never come in the form of FEMA money. Plus, there is news tonight that North Korea has even more missiles ready to fire. But first, why getting caught with a ladder got a local man in so much trouble.
There's one good thing about all the rain lately. It's helping to keep the temperatures down. Today, for example, the high 86 degrees at Bush Intercontinental Airport. But we get rid of some of the rain this weekend, and that means we will be warming up. We'll show you how warm and how wet it will be tonight coming up in the forecast. Hurricanes Katrina and Rita serve as reminders to be better prepared. Start now by picking up your ABC 13 Hurricane Tracking Map at Kroger.
It's the largest map in town, complete with must-have grocery list, emergency contact numbers, and critical before and after storm information. Get your free ABC 13 Hurricane Tracking Map, backed by Houston's largest, most experienced weather team, the 13 Eyewitness Weather Team.
Sack it at Kroger and track it on ABC 13.
Good.
New tonight, teenager in Bellaire charged with trying to help his young girlfriend sneak out of her house. An officer on patrol spotted James Letch unloading a ladder in a church parking lot around midnight Monday night. Letch is almost 19. His girlfriend is just 15, and that's why he's charged with enticing a child, a misdemeanor.
He didn't try to lie. I mean, he was there to sneak his girlfriend out, but when he saw the patrol car, he decided against it, and that he was just going to go home.
Well, just last month, the 15-year-old girl was involved in a runaway case. Police say she was with Letch, but he claimed he did not know she was so young, and he was not charged in that case.
New tonight, victims of last month's flooding are upset, angry after learning FEMA will not help pay for the cleanup. The most will remember the flooding that hit several areas across Harris County. Homes were drenched and cars left underwater. Eyewitness News reporter Gene Apodaca is live in Southeast Houston to show us why residents will not be getting federal aid. Gene?
And Gina, remember, this area was one of the hardest hit areas. You can see weeks after the storm, debris still litters the streets here. Despite this scene, state officials say it's not enough for FEMA to pay up.
We had sheetrock, a pile of sheetrock that came off. We had to tear off all the sheetrock inside the living room. And
2 weeks after Paul Aguilar's home was buried under 2 feet of water, he's still cleaning up. But if that wasn't hard enough, now the news, FEMA won't be picking up the tab.
It's just hard. There's no other way to explain it.
Harris County officials first estimated some 3,200 homes were affected by last month's flood. But when state assessors came to town, they ruled the scene did not constitute a federal disaster.
There are thresholds that have to be met to be categorized catastrophic events.
Under FEMA guidelines, Harris County would only receive aid if at least 25 homes suffered major damage. Those homes would have to also be underinsured or uninsured. According to state data, only 5 homes in all of Harris County met those guidelines.
Nobody cares. Oh, well.
Steve Sessions is just one of dozens now fighting for some type of help. His neighbors have already collected dozens of signatures, hoping to force the city to step in, picking up where they feel the state let them down.
Hey, you know, you had to start all over. No insurance, no nothing. It's not a catastrophe. To me, it is.
And state officials say they certainly empathize with the homeowners, but they say this is actually a good thing, believe it or not. They say it actually proves that most Houstonians are insured. In fact, they say when the adjusters came to this area, 90% of the homes were insured. Live in Southeast Houston, Gene Apodaca, 13 Eyewitness News.
Jurors will hear more testimony in the Andrea Yates retrial tomorrow, this time from the defense. A sick juror postponed the trial today. One of the witnesses the defense expects to question will be the children's paternal grandmother. Yates admitted drowning her 5 children in 2001. Her conviction was later thrown out. She is again pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. She faces a life sentence if she is convicted.
We have an update on a missing boy we first told you about last night at 10. 1.5-year-old K-Rich Forbes is with his mother and grandmother tonight. Tow truck drivers found that missing boy early this morning. Police say his father left him alone in an SUV with the engine running last night at a Southwest Houston apartment complex. And we just checked, and police have not found the thieves who stole that vehicle.
Well, let's check on the weather. Tim Heller's here to tell us about the next few days.
I'm a little concerned about the situation tonight because we could see a repeat performance of what we saw a couple of weeks ago. We got a storm sitting right overhead tonight, and as the temperatures cool off in the atmosphere, a lot of that tropical moisture may end up falling out as some heavy rain. Keep that in mind in the overnight hours. You may end up hearing some pretty heavy showers